The check comes to a table of five and someone says, let's just split it evenly. And you say sure, because saying anything else costs more than the $14 you're about to overpay for a salad you didn't finish. You have not said anything else in 3 years. Across the table, Rachel is doing math on her phone, lips moving slightly, trying to land on a number that gets her home before her card's interest resets tonight. You are also doing math on your phone, different math. A balance with 6 commas in it refreshed 40 minutes ago in the bathroom, and you have already half forgotten what it said, the way you forget things that stopped being surprising a while back. Nobody at this table knows that. Not Rachel, not Mateo, who just ordered the cheapest entree out loud on purpose, like it's a whole personality. Not one person here has the faintest idea, and by the time the check clears, no one will. That's the entire video. Not a lifestyle tour, a ladder, $100,000 to 10 million, 7 levels, and at every single one of them, exactly nothing changes about how this table sees you. Let's start at the bottom of it. Here's the actual claim underneath this video. From $100,000 to 10 million, across 7 levels, the one thing that never changes is that the people across the table have no idea. Not because you're a good liar, because there's genuinely nothing on the surface for them to catch. 7 levels, roughly the same friend group at every one of them, give or take who's moved away or drifted off. What changes isn't the dinner. It's what's happening underneath it. The accounts, the decisions, the specific kind of quiet stress that gets traded in for a different quiet stress instead of ever actually disappearing. 2 things to hold on to before we start climbing. There's a dinner near the end of this where someone almost finds out, and it isn't the moment you'd expect. And by the top of the ladder, keeping the secret costs you something. Not money, something else. And you won't see it coming until it's already happened. Let's start at $100,000. What actually happens the week your net worth crosses $100,000 for the first time? Level 1, $100,000. Mostly, nothing happens. You get a notification from an app nobody else at this table has ever opened, and you sit with it 4 seconds longer than you meant to. The number itself is nothing dramatic. A retirement match you never once skipped, an emergency fund you built instead of the vacation everyone else took that year, a brokerage account you opened because a coworker mentioned index funds exactly once, and you couldn't stop thinking about it for a week. You bump your contribution up 2% the same afternoon. Nobody sees the form. Nobody sees the 4 seconds. At dinner that Friday, you order the same thing you always order, and when Mateo jokes about being broke forever, you laugh the same laugh you'd have laughed a year ago before there was a number sitting quietly behind it, waiting to be protected. The gap between what you have and what this table thinks you have opens right here at the smallest number on the entire ladder. From this point on, it only gets wider. Here's the part that doesn't make sense until it happens to you. Crossing $250,000 feels less exciting than crossing $100,000 did, not more. Level 2, $250,000. The first $100,000 felt like proof something was finally working. This one just feels like a Tuesday because it happened through a system you built once and never had to think about again. The same automatic transfer, a market that had a decent 18 months, one bonus you didn't blow on something forgettable. You open a second account for the first time, this one taxable, no penalty for touching it, just in case you ever need to. The freedom that shows up here is real, and it is completely invisible. You could lose your job tomorrow morning and not panic for 6 months. You mention that to exactly no one. You still split the check evenly. You still make the same mildly annoyed face about gas prices everyone else at the table makes, because reacting any other way would require an explanation you are nowhere near ready to give. Jordan shows up 40 minutes late to dinner, apologizing, still doing the math out loud on what the tow truck just cost him for a flat tire on the highway. Level 3, $500,000. You could have covered that tow truck without opening an app to check. You don't offer because offering is its own kind of confession. Nobody at a table like this asks how you'd know that number off the top of your head, and you'd rather not find out what happens if someone did. $500,000 in, you've started reading about things like backdoor Roth contributions and where to hold which asset for tax reasons, phrases that would have meant nothing to you 2 years ago. You've had one real phone call with a fee-only advisor, someone who doesn't manage your money, just answers questions for a flat fee, because for the first time you're worried about doing this wrong, instead of worried about not having enough to do anything with at all. Jordan pays the tow truck driver in cash from an ATM withdrawal that visibly hurts him. You watch him count it out and say nothing, because there is nothing you could say right now that wouldn't change the whole table. This is the level where the number finally gets a name people actually use out loud. Millionaire. It changes less than the word implies. Level 4, $1 million. You refresh the app twice, about an hour apart, the second time just to confirm the first wasn't a display error. 7 figures. A number you used to punch into a mortgage calculator as a joke with friends now sits quietly in an account nobody at this table even knows exists, let alone has the app for. 20 minutes later, you're in the group chat arguing about whether a $12 Venmo request is fair because someone ordered an extra appetizer and never chipped in. You argue about the $12 exactly the way you would have 3 years ago. Not performing it for cover, actually invested in the fairness of it, because the argument was never really about the money. It's about the group, and that hasn't changed even though the math sitting underneath you has moved by 6 figures since the last time this exact argument happened. That's the level where it lands for the first time that the secret isn't a lie you're telling. It's just a room nobody else has a key to. Quick pause here because we're about halfway up this ladder and it's about to get heavier, not lighter. If you've ever caught yourself doing the mental math on what you could say out loud at a table like this one and then didn't say it, subscribe now. The next 3 levels are where this stops being about the money almost entirely and starts costing something else instead. What do you actually say when someone at the table asks you, point blank, if you're doing okay financially? Level 5, $2,500,000. You almost tell them. It happens at a birthday dinner, 6 of you around a table built for 4, and Rachel asks, not fishing, genuinely worried, because you paid for your own drink tonight without doing the little glance at the tab you used to do automatically. You open your mouth. For about a second and a half, the actual number is right there sitting on your tongue, closer to coming out than it has ever been. Then what comes out instead is, I'm fine, just tired. Which is true, and also nothing at all. Nobody at the table clocks the pause. You clock it for the rest of the night. $2.5 million in, you've had your first real conversation about a trust, about what happens to this money if something happens to you, and there is not one person in your regular life who knows that conversation ever took place. Here's the part that sounds made up until you're the one doing it. At $5 million, you could buy the nicest thing on this menu twice over without checking anything, and instead you order what you always order. Level 6, $5 million. Not out of guilt, out of habit, and a little bit of self-protection. The version of you that starts spending differently at dinner is the version that has to explain it eventually, and explaining is the one exact thing this whole ladder has spent years training you out of. You've now talked to a wealth manager about things this friend group doesn't have vocabulary for yet. Municipal bonds, a donor-advised fund, whether to put anything in a future kid's name before there's a kid to put it in. You still remember exactly what it felt like at $100,000. Those 4 extra seconds staring at a notification nobody else could see. That feeling is completely gone now. What replaced it isn't relief. It's a colder, steadier kind of vigilance. Managing a secret this size alone at every single dinner, indefinitely, with no end date on the calendar. Here's the actual claim this whole video has been building toward. At $10 million, the money stops being the hard part. Level 7, $10 million. The mechanics barely matter by now, and that's exactly the point. The accounts mostly run themselves. An advisor you trust handles what used to be your own Tuesday night research, and the number can move more in one good market week than most of the people at this table make in a year. None of that is the actual weight you're carrying. The weight is this. You have spent years becoming fluent in a version of your own life that nobody sitting across from you has ever once seen. You've gotten so good at it that a nice watch stays under your sleeve out of pure instinct now, not effort. A phone stays face down on the table out of instinct, not effort. You laugh at the $12 joke the exact same way you did at level 1, and by this point, it isn't even a performance anymore. It's just who you are at dinner. That's the real ending of this ladder, not the number. The realization that the secret, once it gets this big, weighs more than the money underneath it ever did. The check comes to a table of 5 and someone says, "Let's just split it evenly." And you say, "Sure." Same 5 words. A different person saying them this time. Rachel moved cities last spring. There's someone new in the group now who doesn't know any version of this story. But the same reflex, the same $14 you're technically overpaying, the same slight nothing on your face. Except this time, you know exactly what's sitting in the account you'll actually pay from down to the day. You know precisely what it cost you to get here, and you know that not one person at this table will ever hear the real number, not because you don't trust them, but because there is no version of saying it out loud that doesn't change how they see every future dinner after this one. You split the check evenly. You always split the check evenly. That's the entire trick, and it still works exactly the way it did the first time. If you've ever quietly done the math at a table that has no idea what you're actually worth, you already understand this ladder better than most people ever will. Subscribe to Danny Wolfe Finance for the next one. And tell me in the comments, what's the next POV scenario you want to see, the situation where keeping the secret would be the hardest? Drop it below. The next one gets built out of whatever you say.